was how you come across somebody once in a while you shouldn't have messed with. That's me.
I am not an African American.
You're Oreo cookie, white in the inside and black on the outside.
I don't have an afro, I have an Amerifro.
Talking that idiotic stuff you talk about, I would slap you.
Go ahead, make my day.
Black as the ace of spades, but 100% American.
Heard around the world by everybody and their mama. The Jesse Lee Peterson Radio Show.
Okay, uniting the races with truth instead of dividing them with lies. We also rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. I am Jesse Lee Peterson. Thank you so much for being with me. You can go to my Facebook fan page, facebook.com/Jesse Lee Peterson, and put in number 1, click like, L-I-K-E, and you're there. It is Manhood Hour. Where are the men? Manhood Hour. Okay. I have an in-studio guest today, Hugo Schwyzer. You are a professor of history and gender studies at Pasadena City College. What is gender studies?
Gender studies is the study of how, for the purposes of this show, we can just say what one's sex is,
Right.
Affects how one operates in society. I teach a course, for example, on women in American society. I also teach a course on men and masculinity. I teach a course on gay and lesbian history. I teach a course on the history of beauty and body image.
Define masculinity for me.
I think that one of the most important things that we need to define masculinity as is in terms of what it isn't. And normally when people talk about being masculine, they talk about the opposite being feminine,
Right.
as if man and woman are opposites. And maybe we'll even agree on this a little bit, Jesse. I think the opposite of man is not woman. I think the opposite of man is boy, meaning that to be masculine is to assume the adult responsibilities that come with being a grown-up, not with doing what women can't do, but doing what boys are unwilling to do.
Are men and women the same?
No, they're not the same, but those differences are not as significant as many people imagine.
What are the differences? Give me an example of the differences.
Well, for example, the differences are biologically. As we know, men can't get pregnant and women do. But the fact that women are the only ones who give birth is not a good enough reason to deny women the opportunity to take on every imaginable role in society. And the fact that men don't give birth is not a reason for men to not be involved as nurturers in the lives of small children.
Is there a difference in the way that men and women think and act in life?
Absolutely, but where I think you and I would disagree is that difference is less a result of biology or of divine plan and more a result of how we're socialized, what our experiences are growing up.
I noticed that men, except that they have been corrupt by the nature of a woman, men make decisions based on logic. Women, and not all, because some women are close to their fathers and they think like men. But women tend to make decisions based on how they feel and think, or think and feel.
Well, to some extent, the differences in terms of how we make decisions is socialized very early. Boys are taught from a very young age that boys don't cry, that they're not allowed to express pain. So that part of themselves gets shut down, whereas girls are taught to be emotional, taught to be nurturers. Dolls are stuffed into their arms. So girls develop, it's kind of like if I went to the gym and I only worked my biceps, but I never ever worked my triceps. I would have strong biceps and weak triceps. Girls work their emotion muscles and boys work their logic and reason muscles, but both have the potential to develop the other muscle just as well.
But it's unnatural for men to be emotional. It's unnatural for women, but it's totally unnatural for men to be emotional. Emotional men are women. They're weak men. They're weak people, and you can't really trust or rely on an emotional man.
Well, I think that,
Is that true?
Of course that's not true. And
what do you mean, of course that's not true?
Well, because I think that, if you look at history, for example, in In the Middle Ages, one of the signs of masculinity, and this was said of many great kings, was their ability to cry. If you look at the Bible, the number of great kings in the Old Testament who weep, Jesus weeps. The ability to cry, the ability to display emotion is in fact positively correlated with masculinity up until very recently.
One thing I know for sure, and there's a whole lot of things I'm not sure of, but one thing I am sure of, anyone who's trying to encourage or teach men to cry don't know what a man is. They only identify with the woman nature, and they're trying to, they have a dislike for masculinity, and they're trying to create man in a woman's image.
I don't think that's true. I think that, the idea that women are the only ones who can cry forces men into a little box. It's as if, being a man isn't about what you don't do and all of the things you're not allowed to do. Being a man is about how you show up as an adult in your relationships with the full range of emotional variety available to you.
Where did you get this idea that a man should cry?
Well, historically, but
those men who cried in the past were weak men. Real men don't cry. Unless they crying at a funeral, maybe mama died or they lost a child. There is a time to cry, but just in ordinary life and dealing with issues of life, real men don't cry. There's nothing to cry about.
Well, if you read the Old Testament, and I'm quite confident you have, David cries over his sins. Jesus himself weeps. We're told Jesus weeps.
But that's a different kind of cry that David did. He cried because he realized he was wrong, and he repented for being wrong. But he did not cry in dealing with everyday life, acting like a woman. And to compare Jesus' cry to that of a woman is evil.
Well, why? I mean, when does Jesus weep? Jesus weeps when he finds out that Lazarus is dead and he sees the grief of Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters.
That's so not true. He didn't weep because he saw the grief of Martha and Mary. He wept because he realized they couldn't see. And that had they understood and had the proper relationship with God, they would not have had to call upon him to do something that they had the power to do. And the other time when he cried, it was because he realized that people were blind and couldn't see. He had compassion, not because he felt sorry for anyone.
Okay.
Or thought or acting like a woman.
All right, I'm not going to argue biblical exegesis with you, Jesse.
Thank you.
You said that Jesus cried from compassion.
Yes.
And when compassion means the ability to really feel another person's suffering.
No,
and
that's not compassion.
That's what the Latin compassion means.
Oh, okay. Just
to suffer with somebody.
Okay.
To be that kind of empathy, that kind of ability to really connect. That's what a man is able to do as well as any woman.
But it's not based on emotions at all.
Well, I would say that feeling another person's feelings is very much based on emotion.
It's Manhood Hour. I'm Jesse Lee Peterson, taking your calls at 888-775-3773, talking about men. You call yourself a feminist.
I do indeed.
What does that mean? How can a man be a feminist?
The word feminist doesn't mean female or feminine. It means somebody who is committed to the social, political, sexual, educational, and economic equality of men and women. And that is a deep commitment of mine.
Do your parents know that you're a feminist?
My father's no longer alive, but he knew while he was alive. And my mother was a feminist. I am a second generation. Actually, I'm not even a second generation. I think I'm a third generation feminist.
So you became like your mother?
I was inspired by my mother. I did not become like my mother. My mother and I are very different people.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that you were inspired by your mother to become a feminist.
Well, I will also say that my father was a feminist as well, just perhaps
Wow.
not. Right, yeah, absolutely. So to some degree, the apple did not fall all that far from the tree.
You wrote an article recently called Poor, Poor, Pitiful Men, the Model Complex of the American Husband. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that, what you see a lot when you hear people talk about marriage is the idea that men in marriage are getting a bad shake, that men in marriage feel, to use the old expression, henpecked by their wives' demands.
They are.
Well, I have
Most of them are, not all.
Right. They may feel that way. But, part of the problem is that what happens is, as I said earlier, we raise women to be very articulate about their emotions and their feelings. We raise men to be shut down about their feelings. And part of a good marriage, you and I may disagree about this, is the ability to communicate effectively about your feelings. So when men and women attempt to communicate...
That is so not manly.
It's so not manly
It's
to
all
communicate.
woman.
Okay. Well, you and I can disagree about this, and we clearly do. I think a man is somebody who's got. It's kind of like a guy who can play quarterback and wide receiver, who can, dunk the basketball and, hit a golf shot. Just as you can have a lot of skills in athletics, you should have a lot of emotional dexterity, which includes the ability to both be strong and courageous and to be able to describe your inner feelings relatively easily. That's not too much to ask.
Can you imagine a woman being married to a man? He goes out and have a tough day, and now he comes home and expresses feelings to his wife. Women hate weak men like that because it's natural for a woman to look up to a man and to help her to overcome her emotions, because the emotions that she's carrying around within herself is hell. Women are not happy being emotional. And so if you're married to a man who is an emotional man, it's like being married to another woman.
If women are naturally emotional, but it's hell to be emotional, why? What's natural about that? Isn't nature doing what you're supposed to be doing?
Well, I said unnaturally emotional. It's unnatural for women to be that way too, but they are that way because of their anger. Women, not all, but most women are very prideful people. They have big egos, and so they're very insecure, and they're very judgmental. Mm-hmm. And so as a result of that, being very judgmental, insecure, they need someone, a good man, a logical husband, to understand that and to help them to drop that judgment so that they can become calm on the inside. They can overcome the hell within. But if the man is acting like a woman too, he's not going to be able to help her overcome the hell.
It's a funny thing. I mean, it's and there's so much wrong with what you're saying, but I'm going to pick one aspect of it, is that you see men and women as complementary, two incomplete people. There are certain things men can't do, certain things women can't do, and they need each other. It's kind of like men and women are like halves, and they need to find each other in order to be complete. Like,
yes.
Yeah. And here's how I see it. You know how we talk about relationships as being like addition? If I find my other half, half plus half equals a whole. I don't think it's addition. I think it's multiplication. You take a half person who doesn't know how to do the full range of emotional work, and you put them with another half person, and women can be half people too. Half times a half is a quarter. You become less. And that's how you create an unhappy marriage. You know how you create a happy marriage is when both people, or any happy relationship, when both people take full responsibility for all of their emotions.
Well, see, what's missing here is that women are half without her man, but a man is not half without the woman. A man is made whole by believing in truth, by believing in God. He is whole. And so when a woman meets a man like that, she comes into his world. She marries into his world. And once she marries into his world, then she become whole. If you notice, women who do not have good relationship with men, their fathers and their husbands, they are very, very, very unhappy, emotional, angry women.
You don't think that there are a lot of men who are very angry at women?
They are, because they hate women. They hate their mothers. They hate what their mothers have done to them. And so they hate women who are just like mama.
Okay, so in Jesse Lee Peterson world, if a man is angry at women, it's because of what his mother did to him.
Yes.
But if a woman is angry at men, it's her fault.
No, it's because of what her mother's done to her.
Her mother, but her father, not her father.
Her father has failed her to be a man, to be a father, and protect her from the woman, from her mother.
I see.
And so she's angry at both in many cases, but primarily is at the mothers, because when you resent, you tend to become like your mother. You notice a lot of men are like women, but they're just like mama.
Interesting.
Isn't that true?
I think that there are a lot of men who have learned that they can have the same set of skills that a woman can while still living in a male body.
Isn't that insane?
Well, I don't know that it's insane. I think it's the most sane thing in the world.
This has been the Jesse Lee Peterson Radio Show, produced by Bond Action. To purchase individual shows or special packages, or to make a donation, visit us on the web at bondaction.org, call 1-877-932-2877, or write to us at P.O. Box 35586, Los Angeles, California, 90035.